I made a big life move this past summer. I moved to Stockholm, Sweden, with my husband and my 5-year-old daughter. And I was really nervous for her. It's a new country, new friends, a new language. But Sweden is number 4 in the world in gender equality, and I want to see how that gets done. So 2 weeks ago, she and I are sitting in a cafe, and I'm getting a little nervous because for the 50th time, I'm about to order a cinnamon bun, which sounds pretty simple, right? Yeah, except I still can't pronounce it in Swedish. So just then, my daughter turns to the barista and says, "Vi vill ha 2 kanelbulle." And then she turns to me and she gives me this smile. So in the 5 months that we've moved to Sweden, my daughter has become fluent in Swedish. I can barely order a cinnamon bun. So it's amazing, right? Like 5-year-old brains, as we know, are so impressionable and so elastic. They observe and take in everything around them. And how much of what they're observing and taking in is being stored in their brain? And for how long? And what is my role in this? What's society's role? Am I teaching her to be a leader in her life? To have some courage, conviction? Because the majority of stories that are told to girls and boys, the narratives and unspoken messages they receive, this is not the lesson we teach. For the most part, our girls, they don't get to slay dragons or save sailors from pirates, or pull swords out of granite rock. And my question is, what would our world look like if girls were raised to speak up, to stand up, and to rise up? Did you know that beginning at around 18 months, all children begin identifying with a gender? Yeah, they do this at 18 months. And then they look for information about what this means and then how they should behave, according to child development. Then, from ages 3 to 5, there are the gender police. Some preschoolers, believe it or not, are not so flexible in their perceptions of gender. They've learned to believe that, girls play with dolls, boys climb trees, girls are nice, boys are rough, girls are weak, and boys are strong. And they take on the role of the gender police. And they ensure that other children around them act in accordance with their gender. And it's pretty common for preschoolers to get a visit by the gender police. And when this happens, that child is more likely to prefer their own gender and develop a bias against the other gender. And don't forget, we're talking about 3 to 5-year-olds. Then at the age of 5, all children's perceptions of gender become rigid for 1 to 2 years. So all this input they received beforehand, right? Some from biology and a lot from us, leads to this very fixed perception of gender for 1 to 2 years. And guess what? We don't yet know if what a child perceives about gender at age 6 has any sort of long-term impact. All right, so why does that matter? Did you know that by the time boys and girls are 6 years old, they both perceive that boys are smarter? Boys and girls both associate brilliance to boys. And girls begin opting out of activities that are deemed to require intelligence or brilliance. This happens by age 6. It's not only intelligence, though. Girls and boys associate helplessness to females and greater power to males, according to researcher Diane Rubble. So let's imagine the potential long-term impact of this. Potential. Let's imagine you're a little girl named Lauri, who by the age of 6 had learned to believe that boys were smarter and more powerful than girls. She read a lot of children's books and watched a lot of videos with a lot of male protagonists. She didn't see a lot of female heroines, so she didn't identify with being an astronaut or a scientist. But she saw a lot of very perfect-looking women, so she took that on. Then at around age 13, she was pretty smart. She didn't always raise her hand in class, for fear of getting the answer wrong and not looking perfect. At age 18, she agonized over which college to attend or which major to choose. And at 27, didn't go for a dream job because her resume didn't 100% match the job description. And at times in Lauri's career, she avoided negotiating around salary or a raise or promotion because she would have had to prove her worth. Lauri avoided certain risks in her life that would have helped her build her internal leader. And she did so because she was raised to believe that girls come in second. They don't get to be the leading character. Okay, so let's go to a little boy named Tom. Tom, at age 6, has also learned to believe that boys are smarter and more powerful than girls. At age 13, he doesn't have any problem raising his hand in class because he intrinsically believes that he's smart. And at age 18, he applies to the best colleges, even if his application isn't really that competitive. And at 27, he applies to any job, even if he has 60% of the skills required. Tom continues to build his career, not noticing that there are fewer and fewer women at his level. And now Tom, in a senior leadership role, where he could use his influence for some good, doesn't realize his unconscious gender bias was formed by age 6, as was Lauri's. I believe that this is the reason we don't have more women in leadership roles. And I can tell you, after working with female executives in Manhattan to women who earn less than $2 a day in India, no amount of leadership training is going to change that mindset overnight. We have got to start earlier. Our girls were not born helpless. They were not born with less intelligence than boys. And our boys were not born holding the power. So let's cut to 1975 in Iceland. On this day, almost 90% of women did not show up to work, to clean their homes, to care for their babies, to their jobs. They did this to protest low wages and undervalued work. Newspapers weren't printed because the typesetters were women. Schools and banks were closed. Flights were canceled. Men had to bring their children to work, or they stayed home. So the country of Iceland came to a standstill that day, literally a standstill. The following year, Iceland passed the Gender Equality Act, which outlawed gender discrimination in workplaces and in schools. And 5 years later, they elected their first female president, a single mother. Iceland is ranked number 1 in the world in gender equality today. The United States? We're 49. Zimbabwe is 50. Even comedians are asking the question, what would the world look like if women ran it? I don't know the answer to that question. But doesn't it seem strange that, at the very least, we are not equally represented in every aspect of society? And what could the world look like, if women and men were equal? Well, that we could see a possible $12 trillion add to the global economy by 2025, according to a McKinsey study. That's $12 trillion. When women and men are equal, every aspect of society benefits. When women are represented in boards of directors and in senior level positions, when there is increased gender diversity, organizations tend to perform better. There's increased employee satisfaction and retention, better decision making, and greater innovation. When women are represented on governments, we tend to invest in public policies that benefit the greater good. And the world over, we are more likely to save money and make wiser investments. But for us to have more of this, we need to raise girls who speak up, stand up, and rise up. Girls who believe in their bones that they are capable of heroic deeds. With all the work I've done with women, whether it's in the United States or India or Africa, I've realized that there's some key attributes of leadership. So first, every female has the possibility of being a leader. Leadership is something that can be cultivated at any moment. I believe that leadership, it all begins with curiosity. As individuals, we need to think about the things that are important to us. We have to become curious about finding the answers and solving some of the challenges that we're going to face every day as leaders. But from there, we move to this place of conviction, where we begin to understand who we are and what we stand for. And once we have that conviction, it gives us the courage we need, to step out into the world and become a better version of ourselves. But we also encourage others to do the same. And it's at this point, I believe, we connect. We connect at such a deep level. The way we lead, the way we create, the way we innovate. And then we weave this all together. So how do we teach the youngest of our girls these attributes of leadership? Our culture, any culture, is made up of a series of stories, right? Recycled over and over again. And we need to be taking many of our gendered stories and tossing them into a wood chipper. Okay? It's a little dramatic. I'll take a large bottle of whiteout. So with that said, there are 3 things I invite you to do starting today. Number 1, we need to change our cultural storytelling to be much more balanced, to focus on the stories of female heroines. We need to be demanding books, videos, and other media forms that focus on the female heroine and empower our youngest of girls. So when you watch a children's video or read a children's book, notice, is there a female protagonist? And if so, how is she portrayed? Is she a doctor with courage, conviction, and compassion? Secondly, we need to focus on early childhood education. Over 60% of American children attend some sort of preschool or daycare. Also notice, actually inquire about the unspoken gender bias of the teachers, because this bias, in an unintentional and casual way, can undercut stories of girls' worth and power. Does the teacher say, "Good morning, Lauri, don't you look pretty in that dress today?" Or, "Tom, can you carry those wooden blocks? What a strong boy you are." Is Lauri allowed to be rowdy? Or is Tom allowed to share his emotions and cry? Thirdly, it comes down to you and me. We need to be mindful of our gender bias and what we do and say every single day. Are we reinforcing that girls can be intelligent, powerful, and nurturing? Do we buy Lauri a dress but then tell her she can't climb that tree? Or do we buy her dolls and kitchen sets while Tom gets Legos and Matchbox cars? Or do we think it's cute when Tom kisses Lauri without asking her permission? I'm thinking of my daughter now, who turns 6 next year. In her world, in all children's worlds, boys and girls share equality. Both can be intelligent and powerful. Imagine a world where we're creating these young women who learn these attributes of leadership at the youngest of ages. Children won't understand the gender policing that they know now. Our girls' brains will be wired towards heroism because we show them they can do anything. They can explore new worlds if they're willing to be curious. They can be anything if they're willing to stand in their conviction. And they can achieve anything if they have courage and connect with others. It's time. We share stories of female heroines, like the princess who saved the village from the monster, or the female president of Iceland. Or better yet, how about your stories of heroism? We need stories where girls speak up, stand up, and rise up. So here is my final question for you. What stories are you going to share? Thank you.